Okay, then the actual practice of mindfulness, a formal practice,
Yeah.
how do you actually do that? Do you do it like Zen?
Well, I don't know how many people watching this are going to know what that means, do it like Zen. And all the Zen people do it differently anyway. I first learned mindfulness in the Zen tradition. It is really at the heart of Zen or Chan meditation practice and traditions. But usually they don't talk about it in terms of mindfulness. Other Buddhist traditions talk more about mindfulness. That may be changing in the Chan tradition or the Zen tradition, I don't know. But one way that there is a similarity is that we choose an object to focus on, and you just stay on that object. That's one very good way to start the practice, daily practice of meditation, of mindfulness, is to, say, find a nice, comfortable posture to sit in and begin to follow your breath, to feel the breath sensations moving in and out of your body. So, and I'm putting my mind down here in the belly, but I could put it up here or anywhere. The breath sensations are most vivid. And I'm riding on the waves of my own breath sensations in the body with full awareness, the deep focus, okay? And I'm using the breath sensations as an object to connect my attention to, okay? So we could use anything as an object of attention. We could use sounds. It doesn't have to be the breath. It could be a sense of the body as a whole, sitting and breathing. It could be thoughts. It could be an emotion. It could be the sky. You could focus on anything. It's very important to understand that the meditation is not about the breathing. It's not about the sounds. It's not about the thoughts. It's not about the objects of attention. It's about the attending. In other words, it's about the quality of awareness that with which we hold experience, inside the body, outside the body. So then you notice, as I was suggesting, when you let the attention fall on some object and you stay with that object, breath comes in, breath goes out, breath comes in, breath goes out, and you're really feeling it. It's very satisfying, it's calming, it's centering. It's a very good feeling. But then all of a sudden the mind starts to say, wow, this is a very good feeling. The last time I felt this good was when I was on vacation. And all of a sudden 3 breaths have gone by and you've missed them, okay? So then you notice, wow, the mind wandered. Not a problem, that's what the mind does. But then we refocus, we bring the attention back to the object of attention, let's say the breathing sensation. So we come back, then it wanders away, it thinks about, oh, I have this very important deadline that I have to work on. Why am I sitting here meditating when I could be working? So then see that as like a distracting thought, come back to the belly, come back to the breath. And we do this over and over. Mind wanders, you bring it back. Mind wanders, you bring it back. Mind wanders, you don't want to bring it back, you bring it back anyway. That's where you're working with the resistance. You're using the resistance as a friend to help cultivate the muscle. And over time, the stability of attention deepens so that maybe the mind will wander a little less, or maybe we won't get so upset when it does wander and think we're bad meditators. But that's the nature of the mind to wander, so it's not a problem. On the other hand, so that's meditating using objects, and that in that way it's the same as Zen. But another way of cultivating mindfulness is just no objects, just awareness itself. This is much harder to do, which is why we use the breath, or we use sound, or we use some object. But since it's all about awareness, you could just kind of drop into awareness and then let whatever happens, happens. So one moment it might be a sound, next moment it might be a thought, next moment nothing's happening and you're just breathing with the body. But you're not preferring one thing to another or choosing one object or over another. So then that is called open presence or choiceless awareness, or in the Japanese Zen tradition, shikantaza. Just sitting, nothing more. So just sitting, nothing more. that turns out to be very hard, not easy. It's like anybody can say, oh yeah, I do shikantaza, but to really do shikantaza, the mind has to be spacious. The awareness is always spacious, but if you're lost in thought, then you're out of touch with that awareness. So it's simple, but it's not so easy. In fact, cultivating mindfulness is the hardest work in the world for human beings because we're so distracted and so caught up in getting someplace else that we forget where we are. But as I was suggesting, it's really necessary in this world of ours now, much more than it was in earlier times, I think, because we've invented even more ways to suffer and to experience stress, pain, and illness. So as we cultivate mindfulness in these ways, both focusing on objects, usually at the beginning, and then just letting ourselves rest in pure awareness, then that changes not only our experience. There's evidence from scientific studies of mindfulness now that even a few weeks of practicing this, 8 weeks of practicing what we call mindfulness-based stress reduction, changes not just the electrical activity in certain important parts of the brain that regulate emotion, that regulate attention, that regulate perception, perspective taking, and things like that. But it also changes the very structure of the brain, so that certain regions that have to do with learning and memory, for instance, and emotion regulation and executive function, decision making, clarity, they actually get thicker. They get thicker in 8 weeks. So this is like the new field of neuroplasticity, and what it's saying is maybe all those thousands of years that people were meditating in monasteries, of course there was no science to be able to know what was going on in the brain, but that it actually changes your whole organism. It's not just the brain either. It's now showing there's a new field called epigenetics that has shown that our chromosomes express different proteins in different amounts depending on how we live our lives, depending on how much sleep we get, depending on how much exercise we get, depending on whether our diet is a high-fat diet, low-fat diet, all sorts of things, depending on how relational we are, if we have intimate relationships that we nurture as opposed to feeling isolated and alone. All of these things upregulate and downregulate hundreds, if not thousands, of genes in our chromosomes. And it turns out now there are more and more studies showing that so does meditation. So, and not just any genes either. Genes that have to do with cancer, what are called proto-oncogenes, are downregulated. Genes that have to do with inflammation, which is now thought to be one of the core ingredients of all chronic diseases, is inflammatory processes. Those genes are also downregulated, and other genes are upregulated. So while these practices may be thousands of years old, we're only recently discovering the profound effects that they can have on the brain and on the nervous system, and that wouldn't necessarily be so important, and on our gene expression, except that what it's suggesting is that this is a profound way for us to express the wholeness and dignity of being human. That if we really want to be healthy, well, we know that it's not just the body that needs to be healthy, it's the mind and our relationships, so it's a very large field, that we need to cultivate that capacity. And that there are ways to do it, systematic ways to do it, that will grow it. So that's where the mental training, the mind training, the discipline of mindfulness really comes in. I think there's one other thing that's important to say just for people who are watching this, and that is they may get the idea that, oh, now how do I do it? What's the one way to do it? What's Dr. Kabat-Zinn's method or something like that? And I just want to say there's no one right way to do it. There are an infinite number of ways to cultivate mindfulness and heartfulness in good ways. The way we do it in mindfulness-based stress reduction is one way. It's a very effective way, but it's not like a catechism. It's not like some kind of formula that you have to do it this way. Ultimately, you have to make the practice of mindfulness your own and find your own way to do it by cultivating a combination of one-pointed focus and this open, spacious awareness. And when you start to practice, the practice starts to teach you how to exercise these muscles. So you learn from the practice rather than from somebody, some authority who's telling you, you must do it this way. If somebody is telling you, you must do it this way, go find someone else to study with, because that's not the way to approach this.